right, welcome back to Gold Seek Radio. Well, up next, it's Robert Ian from Conquer Change. Hello, Robert.
Hey, Chris, this is Robert Ian with ConquerChange.com. So much has happened this past week with the downgrade of U.S. debt and gold rocketing towards $1,800 an ounce. There's so much to discuss. However, I'm going to focus my comments on some of the key takeaways from the GATA London conference. The Gold Antitrust Action Committee had a sellout crowd at the Savoy Hotel in London. Mining, gold, and economic experts from around the world were in attendance. John Embry, Chief Investment Strategist for Sprott Asset Management, discussed some of the reasons people deny and disown any talk or suggestion about manipulation or intervention in the gold market and the economy in general. One of his points focused on cognitive dissonance, whereby when people are presented with facts about market manipulation or intervention that challenge their belief and psychological reliance on free markets, they will go to the ends of the earth to deny, ridicule, and avoid such information, because it causes severe psychological discomfort and threatens the illusion of financial freedom and independence that they have spent their life believing in. Most people would rather stick their head in the sand and avoid any thought of market intervention, rather than understand the implications of such intervention and how to protect oneself accordingly. Peter George, a South African gold mining expert, presented one of the most important takeaways for me at this conference. He presented a chart that correlated two previous defaults in the U.S. dollar and the subsequent parabolic growth of gold and gold shares. The first period of this default and runaway growth occurred in the 1930s during the Great Depression. The second period occurred in the 1970s. According to the chart he presented, it appears we are approximately 6 to 18 months away for a similar explosion in gold and gold shares occurring at the same time. Many people have thought this explosion should have happened sometime in the past several years. However, his chart indicates we are on the doorstep of this explosive event. Ned Naylor Leyland, investment director at Cheviot Asset Management in London, discussed the potential implications of PAGE, better known as the Pan-Asian Gold Exchange. In particular, how the gold contracts on this exchange starting in the fourth quarter of 2011 will begin to provide an alternative price discovery mechanism for gold. This is a critical topic with significant implications for the gold price. I suggest watching Ned's July 29th YouTube interview with Max Kaiser for a complete discussion on this topic. Jim Sinclair, founder of JSMindset.com, was one of the major draws at this conference. Jim is arguably the leading expert on gold the world over. At the beginning of this past decade, when gold was trading at $250 per ounce, Jim calculated that gold would reach and exceed $1,650 per ounce. It took a decade, but moving into the GATA conference, gold did reach and has since shattered the $1,650 mark. Jim says that after $1,764 gold is firmly behind us, gold can move up very quickly because it will mark the beginning of Phase 3 in this gold bull market, where a runaway price would gain exponential properties. He commented on how we will see the bearish cabal on mining shares look for cover as they sell physical gold in exchange for quality precious metal shares. Eric Sprott of Sprott Asset Management delivered the keynote address at the gala dinner. He had the audience howling with laughter as he told everyone that he looked forward to Friday nights because in the U.S., Friday night is bank closing night. That's when all the failed U.S. banks are announced for the previous week. Eric contends the banking crisis of 2008 never ended, and we are gearing up for additional significant bank failures as the game of extend and pretend can no longer disguise the massive capital losses that countless banks are going to have to absorb as they run out of tricks from their black bag of accounting sleight of hand. Hugo Salinas Price, president of the Mexican Civic Association for Silver, opened his speech by saying, "If you don't do something, nothing will change." He went on to talk about low savings rates and said, if you want the American people to save, give them something worth saving, as in silver money. Hugo presented a blueprint that he hopes will be adopted by a third-party politician to return the U.S. to a foundation of sound money. Jim Rickards, Senior Managing Director for Market Intelligence at Tangent Capital and a frequent guest on CNBC, was another of the major draws for this conference. Jim outlined where he agrees and disagrees with GATA's viewpoint. He believes the U.S. gold supply of roughly 8,100 tons has, most likely, been leased, swapped, or otherwise sold multiple times over. In other words, that there are multiple claim checks on every ounce of U.S. gold. However, he believes the U.S. gold is actually in the U.S., under military control, and has not been physically removed from the country. He also believes possession is 9/10 of the law, and when an outright economic collapse occurs, or begins to occur, that the U.S. will declare any lease, sale, or swap agreements that encumber U.S. gold to be null and void. He went on to say that roughly 6,000 of Europe's 10,000 tons of gold are kept within the borders of the U.S., namely in New York, and that through the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1978, the President has near dictatorial control to do whatever it takes to preserve the economic national security of the United States. He believes in a major crisis, the U.S. would confiscate Europe's gold held in the U.S., giving the U.S. in excess of 14,000 tons of gold to use in potentially backing its currency with gold. These comments created significant discussion throughout the rest of the conference. In fact, Jim Rickards appeared on CNBC following the GATA conference and proposed the same scenario to a global audience. If you think this is new information, it is not. In a speech titled Rethinking the Future International Security Environment Seminar Series in December of 2010, Jim presents the same concepts and possibilities. You know, often at conferences, there are maybe 2 or 3 speakers you're really there to see, and the rest of the time you spend checking your email in the lobby. Not this time. The GATA London conference was made up of headliners from start to finish. It was a who's who of the gold investment community, which included high net worth individual investors from 38 countries. My hope is that instead of waiting 3 years between conferences, that GATA does an annual conference from this point going forward, as we move into the third phase of this bull market in gold. And until next time, this is Robert Ian with ConquerChange.com. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Robert, for another excellent report. Well, on behalf of the entire GoldSeek.com crew, including Chris Mullen and Peter Spina, I want to wish you a very safe and profitable week ahead. Until we talk again, thanks for listening.